So just standing here in front of the Central Library here in Belfast, a beautiful sandstone building, and the building itself, the library, is a listed building. But what we're a bit more concerned about is a large development that is planned in behind the library. And it's basically the development which has been submitted to Belfast City Council for outline planning permission basically stretches from North Street, just behind us here, over to Donegal Street, and basically from Royal Avenue where we're here standing. Now, we welcome the area. Very much needs regeneration. This part of Belfast certainly needs work, but we're just a little bit concerned about one or two aspects of the development. Within the area, I say, beside us here is the historic and listed the library. But in behind there are a number of buildings, a number of historic buildings, and the plan is basically at the moment, plans as such are to demolish those buildings and to replace them.
The area between Royal Avenue and Carrickhill really could do with being regenerated and developed, so why stand in the way or contest this decision?
Well, we're absolutely not contesting the decision, and I can't emphasise that enough. The area does need regenerated, and we are all for that. We're absolutely for that. But it doesn't need to be done by tearing down the existing, because there's some beautiful buildings here. There's also some thriving businesses. Noblet's paint shop next door to us here, for example, that's third generation family business and thriving. It doesn't need to be knocked down.
The proposal as it stands at the moment is for full demolition of all those buildings and the construction of new buildings. We're also just a little bit concerned also about the scale of the new development. The proposals vary in scale, but going up to 9, 10, 11 stories high. And the aim of the project is described as creating an urban village, but we just question, why does Belfast need, with so many empty spaces that we have within Belfast, why do we need 11 12-storey buildings?
There is a growing sense of frustration among business owners in this area that they're not being consulted, or the needs that they're looking for are not being met, and they're just almost brushed to the side in favour of development that's going to go ahead regardless of any protest or any alternative sort of development plans.
Yeah, very much so. And there's a lot of businesses here. As I say, some of them have been here for generations. And we are frustrated because there's been a total lack of consultation. How we actually found out about it, there was I think they called it a consultation down in the library here, Central Library. And that's how we discovered that the pub was going to get knocked down. We went down, looked at the plans for the area and the artist impressions of new buildings and all that. And the pub didn't exist. That's how we found out about it.
Currently in Belfast there are a number of housing schemes, and it has been reported that there's up to possibly 10,000 bed spaces planned, some already under construction, such as round the Tech, the old Belfast Met building, also just being demolished as we speak up in Shaftesbury Square. There's a building there which again is proposed student housing, and I mean it was questioned by the university, and also is why does this one developer seek to provide what is nearly the full requirement that the university has planned.
Personally, for yourself, what would you like to see developed in this area? What strategy would you like to see adopted?
Well, now I'm not a town planner, so I don't know what the technical name is. The process that has been adopted to date is known as the red line. They just draw a red line around an area, clear it, and build something new. And that, the research we've done, that is a very outdated way of doing things. A better way of doing it is to develop an area in around existing, so the two can live quite happily side by side. And good examples of that can be seen in as far away as Detroit, in Barcelona, closer to home in East End of London, Temple Bar. It works.
Looking down Union Street, where we're standing just outside the Sunflower Bar. And again, we've got examples of a number of buildings. Again, I stress they're not list buildings, but they are distinctive Belfast buildings. They do play a very strong part in the fabric of our city, and we can just see how that building could be reused in behind for all kinds of uses. As I mean, for instance, the Sunflower Bar just beside where we're standing here has just been totally transformed over the past couple of years into a very, very active, busy bar. And these are what the examples of buildings that make cities special, make cities desirable to live in, desirable to visit to, special places, and then we can have the modern buildings surrounding, but a mixture of both, as opposed to this kind of this sort of blanket building of new.
How did you go about building up the new image for the Sunflower Bar?
Well, we knew what we wanted. We knew the clientele we wanted. We wanted to tie into the arts community. We wanted to tie into local residents, and just basically people who enjoy a good pub. It doesn't need to be themed or gimmicks or televisions or pool tables, just a good pub. We knew it would be a challenge because the pub before we moved in, there's been a pub here 120 years, and it needed some love, basically. It wasn't a very popular bar, it wasn't very used, and while it was outdated, we liked the outdatedness of it, so we wanted to keep that. We didn't want to modernise it and jazz it up. We wanted it to be a little corner pub, as it's always been. It just needed more footfall.
We're just at the corner of Stephen Street and Kent Street, and you see behind a few of the remaining traditional two-storey terraced houses in Belfast. And as part of the plan, these buildings will be demolished and then will be replaced by much higher buildings. And again, now these buildings aren't listed, but again, we would like to see an imaginative use of existing historic buildings together with new provision. Now, in terms of the planning application, the consortium, Northside Regeneration Consortium, who've submitted the application. Now, it's reported whenever the scheme was announced last year, they currently own 40% of the land. The Department for Social Development own, again, reported by the BBC, 10%, and the rest of the land is in private ownership. Now, to make the scheme work overall in this overall development, the consortium then is seeking to negotiate with owners about then possibly buying. If some of the developers or the owners don't want to sell the land, then the Department for Social Development can use its powers to buy land to make, but they'll only do it if it's for a strategically very important scheme for Belfast. So that is why we would recommend that the owners should work more with the existing historic fabric and actually create something that is unique and give potentially added value. And it's not always that big, bright and brand new is the best. And we've seen other examples in the city centre where large-scale development has come into difficulties.
The Northside Regeneration Project will create an opportunity for up to 300 million of private sector investment, and it is estimated that throughout the course of the project over 1,500 jobs will be created or safeguarded, and the overall value to the Northern Ireland economy will be in the region of 770 million. What are your views on this?
Well, that's wonderful, absolutely great. Because I can't emphasise enough, we are not against regeneration in this area. It needs it badly. But there's no reason why we can't be part of that. It doesn't need to be regenerated, as in wipe out the existing and just start from scratch. It doesn't need to be like that.
And what about public support, and how has the public reacted to the pending news that this bar could be demolished in favour of new development?
Well, we're very pleasantly surprised at the outcry of support. which obviously we welcome, and it all helps. It came about, Sunflower just won Pub of the Year 2015, and it was in a comment of that, it was that Sunday Life had sponsored that. So we were talking to them, and I sort of, by the way, we'll enjoy it while it lasts because we might get knocked down, which they hadn't heard about this. So that's how the story sort of, 1 week we win Pub of the Year, and next week we're going to get knocked down.
Just further down North Street, we've got the large scheme, the retail scheme that was proposed some years ago and again this was supported by the Department for Social Development, and we've recently just heard that scheme has stopped and won't be moving forward, and that land again has lain blighted for years.
When the Victoria Square complex was being redeveloped and put up, there was some issues with the kitchen bar, which was accommodated, and now it's situated in a prime location. Is that something that you might maybe hope happens with the Sunflower Bar and the Northside development?
It's not something I hope happens, absolutely not. And the difference between ourselves and the kitchen bar situation, that was one big project, the Victoria Centre. So they needed a clear site. This isn't one big project, so there's no reason why they can't build in around existing.
There's great danger in these large-scale visions, that things can be knocked down, but it can take an awful lot longer to replace, and that's why we would really, encourage a more bit-by-bit development, demolish a part, and then rebuild, as opposed to a blanket knock down and then wait for years before we see maybe one building appear in maybe two buildings. Okay, it's more complex, it takes a wee bit more imagination, but we think for the long term it would be much better for the city of Belfast.
My gut feeling is we've a fight on our hands, but I think it's winnable. It's probably a couple of years down the line, but we didn't want to wait until then. We didn't want to wait until the wrecking ball's outside the door. It's too late then to moan, oh, what about our bar? So if we get in now, before it's too late for people to change plans and make